Good afternoon. I'm Gary Nystrom. I'm chairman of the Boone County Republicans, and I also sit on the State Republican Committee. And I thoroughly mean good afternoon and welcome to Boone County. Fall's in the air, and I'm sure on your way out here you saw a lot of farmers in the fields. They're harvesting their crops and doing what Boone County is known for, the ag industry. Even though the air is a bit crisp, what a great sunny day to have an event like this at a great location. I'd just like to give a special thanks to Debbie Ladd, Rick Wales, and their family for opening up their facility for us. Great venue and a real asset for Boone County. I can't go without mentioning how great Iowa Governor Reynolds is. Let's hear it. You know, there is another state, just besides Iowa, I guess, okay, that is very proud of their past governor, and that being South Carolina. Their first female governor was elected in 2010 and was decisively reelected in 2014. 2016, she was nominated to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And in that role, she served as a member of the President's Cabinet and also was on the National Security Council. This lady is no stranger to Iowans. She's made several trips to our state over the past several years. One specific event I remember was when she came to Joni Ernst's Roast and Ride a few years ago out at the Central Iowa Expo, which is in the eastern part of Boone County. She was speaking to people, and there was a large crowd, and they kind of brought them inside a building because it was raining. I don't know if you remember this or not. But she's very cordial like she always is and wants to talk to people and shake hands and do picture ops. And I was standing in the back a little bit with a veteran. He was in a wheelchair. And she spotted that, and I don't know how we made eye contact or ever, and she kind of signaled, bring him up, and it just opened up. And this man, this veteran, came up, and Nikki was the most gracious person in the world you could ever see. Took time, and I'm telling you what, that made that guy's life. It was the darndest thing in the world you've ever seen. Made him happy, it made Nikki happy, and I'm telling you what, the people around just melted when they saw that happen. That was a very, very touching thing. Thank you for that. At this time, I've talked enough. I'd like to introduce to you Scott Racker. Scott is a co-chair for the Nikki Haley campaign. Scott?
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon. What a great day in Iowa, right? This is America right here. I'm so honored to be here today with my wife, Martha, because we are all in for Governor Haley. And I want to tell you why, because if you're here to find out, you're going to listen to her, and I hope you walk away with the same commitment that Martha and I have walked away with, and our young children, 30 and 28, have walked away with. And that is, we're ready for generational change in this country. We're ready for a leader that has the experience that she demonstrated as governor of South Carolina. We witnessed that firsthand. She was transformational in her leadership there. And she elevated to the role of ambassador to the United Nations. She had to take tough stands for the United States of America there. She's been in the room on the international conversations. What I'm most enamored with her leadership is that she is an American that's about bringing people together, getting rid of the drama of the public arena, and getting us back to leading. She's going to tell you about the issues that are important to this country and why she wants to lead. What I know is that she is a woman that will bring civility and decency and respect, and at the same time be tough-minded, can disagree without being disagreeable, and can move our country forward to that better America we know is there for all of us and our children. The other thing I want you to at least give pause and acknowledgement for is while we stand here today in the beauty of this agricultural heartland of our country, her husband, Michael, is deployed in Africa. And for all of you that have served and for her husband, Michael, serving, let's have a round of applause for the sacrifice that she's making as a wife and mother as well. So with no further ado, let me introduce to you the woman that I expect and look to be the next president of the United States, Nikki Haley. Thank you for coming to Iowa.
So much. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Gary. It's great to be with all of you. I mean, this is America, right? It doesn't get more beautiful than this. But I got to tell you, this Southern girl is cold. It is, and I was here in the winter last year and I'm bracing myself, but you guys just look like you're laying out and that nothing is wrong and I am freezing. So my skin is a bit thin. First of all, I grew up playing in a cotton field and on a dairy farm. I grew up in a small rural town in South Carolina. So when I see this feels like peace and it feels like home. And you are blessed to live in an area like this. Because when you look at what's happening in the world, I have to take a moment just to acknowledge the sadness that has happened in Israel. To think that they were having a day of rest and they woke up to missiles being fired, to families being murdered, to women, children, and the elderly being taken hostage and dragged in the streets. They are now saying goodbye to their loved ones as they go to the front lines because they are trying to fight for their country. And while all of this is happening and all of the bloodshed that has been there, what have the terrorists been doing? The terrorists are celebrating. As they drag these women through the streets, they're celebrating. They're putting kids in cages and putting them in playgrounds and having the Palestinian kids make fun of them, kick them, do all these other things. And when they're celebrating, what are they saying? Death to Israel, death to America. Death to Israel, death to America. That's why we should care. Don't ever let anyone tell you that Israel needs America. America has always needed Israel. They are the front line of defense for all of the Iranian regime and the terrorist proxies that they have. And so the way we have to deal with this is with strength, is united, and is to understand also that the first thing we have to do is no more taxpayer money going to Palestinians or any of the Palestinian organizations that support Hamas at the United Nations. We need to tell all the regional governments to stay out of this conflict, mainly Lebanon. We don't need Hezbollah getting involved in this. They all need to stay away, and they need to know that America is backing Israel. We need to make sure we send all of the intelligence, arms, and equipment that Israel needs to take their country back and defeat Hamas once and for all. And we need to freeze the Iranian assets, yes, including the $6 billion. We need to freeze that. And Biden weakened those sanctions on oil. We need to go back and put heavy sanctions on oil because we had them strapped for cash and we had their economy in shambles. And now they are living with billions of dollars. And what are they doing with it? Sending it to Hamas, sending it to Hezbollah, sending it to the Houthis, and spreading terrorism around the world. And let me tell you, Secretary Blinken, he was on Meet the Press before me yesterday. And he said, well, they're not using the $6 billion for their terrorist activity. I've dealt with Iran. They are playing a shell game. They're moving money around as we speak. And for Blinken to turn around and say we don't have proof that Iran is involved, Hamas is funded by Iran. What Hamas does is Iranian-led. We need to be smart and realize that. But also, let's realize that you always have to have a president that has moral clarity, that knows the difference between right and wrong, that knows the difference between good and evil. And when we have that moral clarity, we need to understand this is not the time to be divided or distracted. Because when America's distracted, the world is less safe. We're seeing that. This is a time for us to unite, not just as Americans, Unite in support of Ukrainians fighting their freedom. Unite in support for Israelis fighting their freedom. Unite in support that we understand this could happen to us. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. We needed them on 9/11, and they were there. If we need them again, God help us, because we have to understand we can't fight anything alone. We'll need them again. So that's my beef on Israel. I say that because I think that I believe God sends us messages for a reason. And I think that the message is it's enough of the distractions. It's enough of the chaos. And there is a reminder. When we see Democrat chaos, you don't chase Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. That's not the solution. You do it with a stable hand, and you do it with leadership. So I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina. Like I said, 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. My mom started a business out of the living room of our home. 30 plus years later, it was a successful company. I started doing the books for the family business when I was 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that was child labor. I went on. I'm not an Ivy Leaguer. I went to a public university. I went to Clemson University. Go Tigers. Graduated with a degree in accounting. I'm not a lawyer. No offense to our lawyers. I'm an accountant. Accountants are problem solvers. And went on and worked in the corporate world for a while. And then I came back home to the family business. And one day I was sitting with my mom, telling her how hard it was to make $1 and how easy it was for government to take it. And my mom said, quit complaining about it, do something about it. I truly did not know you weren't supposed to run against a 30-year incumbent in a primary. I had never been politically active. Ignorance is bliss. Once I realized he was related to half the district, the only option was to win. So I went around the district and said, we have way too many lawyers at the State House. I think they need a really good accountant. The district took a chance on me, and we won. When I got to the State House, I fought hard for small businesses. And as I got into it, a few years in, it was more and more noticeable that South Carolina did a lot of their voting by a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. But one day they passed a bill that would give themselves a pay raise. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, silence. The ayes have it. Yet to this day, you can't find anyone that says they voted themselves a pay raise. I was furious because we had a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican governor. And so I filed a bill that said anything important enough to be debated on the floor of the House or the Senate is important enough for the people to know how their legislators voted. And the Speaker of the House said, put the bill away. We don't need to have it. We will decide what the public needs to see and what they don't. To summarize this up, when I didn't put it away and I went around the state of South Carolina telling them what was going on, they stripped me of everything. They took me off all my committee assignments. I lost all my seniority. I could take the well. No one would hear me speak. I could sponsor a bill. No one would co-sponsor. So I ran for governor. And I'm proud to say one of the first bills we signed into law is now in South Carolina. Anything debated on the floor of the House or the Senate requires a legislative vote on the record, and we took it a step further, and we did it on every section of the budget. And you were listening to my playlist. I love music, so on the day of the bill signing, we blasted throughout the State House, Pat Benatar's Hit Me With Your Best Shot. When I became governor, South Carolina was hurting. We had 11% unemployment. We had thousands of people on welfare, and South Carolina was the butt of the jokes. All our jobs had been in the textile industry, and when the jobs went overseas, so did what happened to families and their incomes. And so we got to work. By the time I left being governor, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz. We brought in Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies, and they were referring to us as the beast of the Southeast, which I still love. We moved that 11% unemployment down to 4%. We announced jobs in every county, and we acknowledged the truth. We said if you have to show picture ID to buy Sudafed, if you have to show picture ID to get on a plane, you should have to show picture ID to protect the integrity of the election process. And we passed voter ID in South Carolina. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. And by the time I left, we were named the friendliest state in the country, the most patriotic state in the country, and the #2 state in the country people were moving to. And then I got a call to go to the United Nations. And my honest answer was, I don't even know what the UN does. I just know everybody hates it. I wasn't wrong about that. But when you get the chance to serve your country, you jump. And so when I got to the UN, I wanted countries to know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. So we got to work. We pulled ourselves out of the Iran deal. I negotiated with Russia and China to pass the largest set of sanctions in a generation against North Korea. We moved our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. But we acknowledged a truth. And the best part that we did was we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and America was respected again at the UN. Now I'm running for president, and I don't need to tell you how bad things are. You don't have to turn on the news to see it. You feel it when you go to the grocery store. You feel it when you fill your car with gas. We are $34 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. Now, I would love to tell you that Biden did that to us. And he has sent us down this socialism roller coaster that's dangerous for sure, that we have to put an end to. But I've always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you today. Our Republicans did that to us too. You go back and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability. They expanded welfare that has now left us with 100 million Americans on Medicaid, 42 million Americans on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right? Nope. They doubled down and opened up earmarks and pet projects for the first time in 10 years, pushing through 7,000 of them last December. Want to know how they spent your money? $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado, and the list goes on. The 2024 appropriations budget, Republicans put in $7.4 billion worth of pet projects and earmarks. Democrats put in $2.8 billion. Now you tell me who the big spenders are. All while 1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bill, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, 50% of American families can't afford diapers, Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years, Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Congress has one main job. That's to fund our government. You saw the debacle that happened last week. Do you know Congress has only given a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? 4 times in 40 years. Complete and total irresponsible chaos. You look at our education system and everybody wants to blame COVID for education. We had issues with education before COVID. Pre-COVID, 67% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading or math. Over 80% of our 8th graders are now not proficient in history or civics. And our 13-year-olds are scoring the lowest levels they've scored in decades in reading and math. Yet what do they want to talk about? They want biological boys to play in girls' sports. Totally lack of any sort of attention whatsoever. Then you look at the border. And let me tell you, I've been to the border, and I didn't pull a Kamala, go and come back. I went 400 miles down that border. You're not ready for what I saw. When you get up in the morning, you get your coffee, and you watch the news. When these ranchers get up in the morning, they get their coffee, and they go see if anyone died crossing their fence. They pick up whatever little kids are left behind, turn them over to Border Patrol. I met with multiple sheriffs. They said before 7 a.m., they round up whatever illegal immigrants they can find. They turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol documents them and releases them until their court date years from now. And when I asked Border Patrol about their job, they said, you want to know what we do? We're glorified babysitters. They don't let us do our job. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed that border. We had enough fentanyl cross the border that would kill every single American last year. Number one cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. And then my parents always taught us, you take care of those who take care of you. I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, 33,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 veterans suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment, they call the VA, and on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and it starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. So that's a lot of bad, right? A reminder, Congress could have done any one of these things. They could have fixed any of these things that we have. But what has Congress done for you lately? Nothing. Don't you think it's time we had term limits in this country? Don't you think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75? I don't care if it's 50 or up. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. We all know 75-year-olds that can run circles around us, right? Look at Senator Grassley. But then we also know Joe Biden. We need to make sure that the people making these decisions are at the top of their game. They're making decisions on our national security. They're making decisions on the future of our economy. Right now, the Senate's the most privileged nursing home in the country. We need people who are ready to make these hard decisions. So now I'm going to tell you what I told South Carolinians when I became governor. No more whining. No more complaining. Now we get to work. How do we fix it? When it comes to the economy, let's claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, let's go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud that we know exist. 1 out of every $7 of that COVID money was fraudulent. If 8% of our budget is interest, quit borrowing. Cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? And if they don't give us a budget on time, we should tell them no budget, no pay. No more paying them if they don't get us a budget on time. That's their job. We will stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. And we need to focus on the middle class. We are watching in America the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and we are losing the middle class. So the way we're going to deal with that is we're going to first eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. Americans are spending $1,000 more per year per car. We need to give them the relief in that. The second thing is we need to cut taxes for the middle class and collapse the bracket so it's simpler. That way they'll have more cash in their pockets to do what they need to do. We will get rid of unfair distortions in the tax code, like the state and local tax deduction. Those are designed to take from red states and give to wealthy people in blue states. We need to put an end to that. And let's make small business tax cuts permanent. They made the corporate tax cuts permanent, but they left the small business ones temporary. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. Let's make sure we make those taxes permanent. And then let's look at the federal government and take as many of those programs as we can and send them down to the states. Think of welfare, think of benefits, think of education, think of health care. Wouldn't you rather those programs be in the hands of Kim Reynolds than in the hands of D.C.? It would reduce the size of the federal government, and it would empower the people on the ground. That will make a huge difference. Let's put spending caps on our economy. We live under spending caps. Congress needs to live under spending caps. Let's make sure that we have term limits once and for all, and let's make sure we bring back freedom to our economy. Freedom for you to know that government works for you and to stop it being that you work for government. When it comes to education, we knew in South Carolina if a child couldn't read by 3rd grade, they were 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we held our kids back. We need to do that across this country. We brought in reading remediation programs. We brought in their parents, and we set them up for success. We need to do that across this country because God help us if we don't get these kids reading. 10 years from now, we'll be in a world of hurt. Secondly, no parent should ever wonder what's being said or taught to their child in the classroom. We need complete transparency in the classroom. Parents have one job, and that's to make sure that we get our kids right. That's why parents should be deciding which schools their kids go to. Every child deserves a good education, regardless of where they're born and raised. We have to stop mandating kids on going to school where their zip code is. And then let's build things in America again. Let's put vocational classes back in our high schools. In South Carolina, we had apprenticeships all over our state. We taught our kids how to build the things we were making. Let's get our kids invested in our economy. And remember, it's all about raising strong girls. Strong girls become strong women. Strong women become strong leaders. For goodness sake, let's get biological boys out of girls' sports. It's important. When it comes to the border, we'll do what we did in South Carolina, but we'll take it further. We will do a national E-Verify program and require businesses to have to show that the people they hire are in this country legally. Let's defund sanctuary cities once and for all. You saw what happened in Philadelphia. We've got to put an end to that. Let's go back to the Remain in Mexico policy because nobody wants to remain in Mexico. Let's put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. And instead of catch and release, let's go to catch and deport. That's how we will stop what's happening on the border. We've got to do it. But don't let anyone tell you that it's just the border. We have a broken legal immigration system, too. It shouldn't take someone 10 years to become a citizen. And Republican and Democrat presidents have had it wrong. They've always done quotas every year about how many people they're going to let into America. Instead, what if we went to our businesses and our industry and said, what workers do you need that you can't find? So now think of agriculture, think of construction, think of tourism, think of tech. What if we brought people in based on merit? Then all of a sudden you're building our economy. You're not just letting people because, you're letting people in because the talent goes to the producers that need help. That's the way we need to deal with legal immigration. And when it comes to our veterans, I'll remind you, the media will always show us when our loved ones deploy and the tears that are shed. And then the media shows the happy days when our loved ones come home and the blessings that we have knowing that they're safe. I'm the wife of a combat veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan. When he came home, it was a blessed day. But that was the easy part. It was when he got home that was hard. He couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for the year that he was in Afghanistan, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We have to love them when they come back home, too. We need to focus on their transition and making sure it's healthy. We need to give them telehealth and let them get the mental health care they need right when they need it. Let's make sure that they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. Let their GI benefits go to things other than education. And the way we're going to take care of their health care is I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA. And you watch how fast that gets fixed. It'll be the best health care we've ever seen, guaranteed. So those are the domestic issues. And we know how we need to get back on track to fix those. Now let's talk about national security. Did you ever think we'd look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at us? It's a national embarrassment. You've got Russia invading Ukraine. You've got Iran building a bomb. You've got North Korea testing ballistic missiles. You've got China on the march. You now have Iran and their terrorist proxies murdering Israelis. But make no mistake, none of that would have happened had we not had that debacle in Afghanistan. The idea that my husband and his military brothers and sisters who served there had to watch America leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. And now we're facing the biggest threat that's faced us since World War II. China has been preparing for war with us for years. That's not being dramatic. They're already here. They've infiltrated America. They bought 400,000 acres of farmland, most recently near Grand Forks Air Force Base, where our most sensitive drone technology is. They bought the largest pork producer in the country, right here in Iowa. They're pouring millions of dollars into our universities, stealing our research, spreading Chinese propaganda. You thought we got upset over the Chinese spy balloon. What about the fact that 90% of law enforcement drones in this country are Chinese? Now look at the surveillance they have access to. There's a set of technology we never want China to have because it builds up their military and it threatens America. Yet 70% of it was approved by the Biden administration last year. We've had more Americans die of fentanyl than the Iraq, Vietnam, and Afghanistan wars combined. 75,000 Americans last year alone. You've got a spy base going off our coast in Cuba. It's just a matter of time before they bring in military there. We can't let that happen. And speaking of military, they have modernized and strengthened their military at a record pace. They now have the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing they're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing cyber. They're doing space. They've developed hypersonic missiles. We've barely gotten started. And now China's the lead developer on neurostrike weapons. Weapons engineered to change the brain activity of military commanders and segments of the population. That's who we're dealing with. And Biden and Yellen and Blinken and everybody else wants you to think that China's a competitor. China doesn't see us as a competitor. They see us as an enemy. I dealt with them at the UN. They want to destroy the West. They make no bones about it. We have to start getting our priorities straight. If we don't start to focus on the things that threaten America, we will lose our country. So how do we deal with China? The first thing we do is we stop letting them buy any of our land and we take back what they've already taken. We go to our universities and we say, you either take Chinese money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over, and we get the infiltration out of our universities. We make sure that they know no more stealing $600 billion worth of intellectual property because there will be a price to pay. And we will let them know that we will end all normal trade relations with them until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how that fentanyl flow stops if they do that, because they know they need America for their economy. We blacklist that technology so that they never get it. And there were 2 things in particular that China, Russia, and Iran never wanted us to have when I was at the UN. They never wanted us to be energy independent, and they never wanted us to have a strong military. We shouldn't just be energy independent, we should be energy dominant. No more going hat in hand to Saudi Arabia, no more getting dirty oil from Iran and Venezuela. We should be exporting as much liquefied natural gas as we can to our allies and our friends, and we should make sure we're dominant. And when it comes to our military, we need to have a strong military, one that's ready for the wars of the future, which are not land, air, and sea. It's land, air, sea, cyber, artificial intelligence, space. And that doesn't mean throwing more money at the Department of Defense. That means bringing down the bureaucracy and the red tape and all the clutter that's slowing it down now, and making sure our men and women have the equipment that they need and the training that they need. And for God's sake, we have to stop making them take gender pronoun classes. It's demoralizing to them. When we start looking at what it means to have national security, we need to remember food security is national security. Energy security is national security. Our military is national security. Those are the first three priorities we need to have. So we have the answers to what we need to do. But the one thing we have to tackle before anything else is we have to stop this national self-loathing that has taken over our country. The idea that they say America's bad or rotten or racist. I was elected the first female minority governor in history. America's not racist, we're blessed. Our kids need to know to love America. They need to be saying the Pledge of Allegiance when they start school every day. You know, 3 months ago, I dropped my husband Michael off at 4 a.m. for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to fight for us there, shouldn't we be willing to fight for America here? Because we have a country to save. But in order to do that, we've got to acknowledge some hard truths. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president. That is nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. But the only way we're going to do that is when we start to focus and look at the fact that we have got to have a new generational leader. We've got to leave the negativity behind us. Forget the headlines of the past. Forget the chaos in the past. Let's move forward with strength and stability and the solutions to take on these new threats that have us. Because if we do that, that's when we'll suddenly see America's back on track. And when America's back on track, we'll see peace around the world. Do you remember when you were growing up? How simple life was? How safe it felt? It was about faith, family, and country. Your parents raised you to be responsible individuals. You went to school and you learned what you needed to be successful. You went to church and you found your faith and your conscience. Don't you want that again? Because we could have that again. But in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage from everybody here. Courage for me to run. And courage for every one of you to know, don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't play in this caucus. It matters. We have to win. Because a vote for Joe Biden, let me tell you, he might be the one running, but it's a President Kamala Harris that we're up against. And don't let anybody tell you different. But this is what I'll tell you. If you will join us in this effort, if you will commit and be prepared to fight for our country to get her back on track, I promise you we will win this. And I promise you that our best days are still yet to come. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thank you so much. So y'all have been very nice to listen to me. Now we're going to open it up for questions. Andrew has the mic, so raise your hand. There's nothing I won't answer. You may not like my answer, but there's nothing I won't answer.
I saw something on the internet that said that you gave China thousands of acres of land in South Carolina. Why would you do that?
Well, I will tell you, don't believe what you read on the internet. So first of all, there is not a governor in this country or a state in this country that hasn't worked to get Chinese business in their state somewhere. There's not a household in this country that doesn't have Chinese products in it. But there is a difference between focusing on something that's going to hurt our national security and focusing on whether I brought a fiberglass company to South Carolina. We didn't sell any land to the Chinese, but yes, I recruited a fiberglass company. The focus needs to be, what do we do with China in terms of national security? That will be day one, what I focus on. And the way you look at that is, if China were to pull the rug out from under us tomorrow, would we be okay? Think about COVID. What'd they tell you to do? They all told you to put a mask on. They were made in China. They all told you to take a COVID test. You turned it over, it was made in China. You go down the aisle of your drugstore right now, all those medicines are made in China. Those are the things we have to focus on. Right now, number one antibiotic sold, amoxicillin. You parents will know because our kids' ear infections, that's what we deal with, right? We have a great American company called U.S. Antibiotics. They produce amoxicillin. But America doesn't buy amoxicillin from U.S. Antibiotics. America gets all the amoxicillin from China. We need to shift our priorities. We've got to focus on what it's going to take to make sure that we are keeping Americans safe. That's what we'll do. It's not from some flippant thing in the internet that says, oh, you brought a business in from China. It's about the fact, what about the farmland where we've got cables going underneath our military installation? What about the fact that we've got Chinese police stations, a dozen Chinese police stations doing surveillance right now? Those are the things we need to focus on to make sure we get back on track. All right, Andrew, where are you? Okay.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
We always hear about changing term limits and the process of we the people. The process is the people that are in the Congress, they're never going to vote themselves out. So how does that start?
So we do it from the outside in. So when I am president, we will have a Haley term limits pledge. When everyone files to run for an office, incumbent or otherwise, they are going to have to answer, are you going to sign the pledge or not? I'm going to make sure you have the information from every person running in D.C. and every congressional office that they will have to answer whether they sign the Haley term limits pledge or not. It will just give you the information you need. And then they have to follow through on it. We just do it. I did this in South Carolina. When you start to move things from the outside in, it gives the people control. We will do what it takes to give you control because they won't vote on it themselves. But guess what? We're going to make them either have to sign a pledge or not and stand by it. That's how we'll keep up with it.
Right back here.
Thank you for coming to Iowa.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your part on supporting energy security. And I know that you've come out in support of E15 year-round. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Would a President-elect Haley support higher blends at the pump like E30?
Well, I hadn't thought about that. I think the one thing is I'm not for a national mandate. So I know Iowa's done E15, and I don't have any issues with that. And I know that, whereas Biden's waived, some of the things, and your delegation has done a good job. So far, everything I've seen your delegation do, I support that.
Let me preface this, first of all, by saying I did 22 years in the Marine Corps.
Oh.
I have a son that's done 4 tours in the Mideast.
God bless you.
And I am probably the only Citadel grad living in Iowa.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
as of this weekend, I think we are on a two-front war, at least if not in boots, but certainly in the financing of it. And I'm sure that China probably is looking a little bit different at Taiwan as a result of this weekend as well. Biden, and I don't know who said this, but they said that Biden has been almost 100% wrong on all foreign affairs. And he proved that in Afghanistan, he's proven it in Iran, China, and on our southern borders. So I guess my question to you is, what do you think the Biden administration is going to do? And if you were president and commander-in-chief, what would you be doing today?
It's a great question. So I think that from what I've seen from the Biden administration, his words were good. You know, I appreciated that he came out quickly and he said, you know, we're going to make sure that we stand with Israel. I think that was the right thing to say. I think his actions today of sending, you know, our Navy ships to making sure that we've got, you know, jet fighters going over there, that's a sign of deterrence. I think that was another good start. But what I think is Biden owes everybody an apology. If you look at the fact, why did he fall all over himself to get back into the Iran deal? And because he was falling all over himself to get back into the Iran deal, he loosened all the sanctions that allowed floods of money to go to Iran to allow them to funnel money to Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. And then why did you give them $6 billion to go for this hostage exchange? You have to, the one thing that I saw at the UN, you can't change the culture of a regime, no matter how much money you give them. This is a regime that says death to America, death to Israel every day. They don't even try and hide it. You should never try and negotiate with terrorists. You can't win that, because all they'll do is take advantage of you. So that's where I think his weakness has been there. I hope the next step I'd like to see Biden take, freeze the assets of Iran, make sure that they don't get that $6 billion, start enforcing the sanctions again on all of their oil exports, and let's deplete their economy, because that way they can't continue to fund the terrorism. That's what I think he should do. What I would do, you made a comment, and I think it's important because you talked about the money that's going in different places. First, let's talk about Ukraine, because I think there's a debate now on whether we should be involved in Ukraine or not. When I talked about having moral clarity and knowing the difference between right and wrong, you have a thug that invaded a pro-American, freedom-loving country. We had no better friend at the UN than Ukraine. They voted with us on absolutely everything. They were at every press conference, whether I asked them to be there or not. They were incredibly supportive of America. So now this thug invades their country, tries to take their freedoms away. Everybody gave them 5 days to survive. And look at the passion and the will that they've shown to save their country. They have now destroyed 50% of Russia's defense. They have gone to a bailout with Kim Jong-un. They're now, Putin's hit rock bottom. He's getting drones from Iran. He's getting missiles from North Korea. They've raised the draft age in Russia to 65. And what have we done in return? We've spent 3.5% of our defense budget. 3.5%. 11 European countries are giving more than we are, as they should. Putin has said once he takes Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. Then that puts us in a war. 3.5% is a small price to pay to prevent war. So one, I would continue doing what we're doing with Ukraine and let them finish this. We want to finish this quickly. We need to make sure that stops. We can do that. Then when it comes to Israel, I would tell Israel, whatever it is you need to not just get your country back, to eliminate the terrorists, we should do. Because Hamas saying death to America is a threat to us. It is in our best interest to make sure that they are not doing anything that would harm Americans or harm our friends. We are going to have to deal with terrorism the way it needs to be dealt with. And that means you eliminate them. Don't let anyone slow it down. I know right now Russia and China are saying de-escalate. But what we have to remember, this is a coalition. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea have all united. What are they uniting against? America and freedom and the West. That's what they want to destroy. We can't take our eyes off the ball. So national security will be huge for me because I will do whatever it takes to support Americans. And there are many people that say, oh, she just wants to get involved in war. She just wants to do this. No, my husband's in the military. The last thing I want him to do is go fight any war. I'm trying to prevent wars. But the way you prevent wars is with strength. And we also need to remember a win for Russia is a win for China. And notice, Russia and China are not calling out Iran today. Russia and China aren't calling out Hamas today. They're just saying, oh, you need to de-escalate. Israel needs to stop. That's your answer. You'll get a strong national security with me. I think it's hugely important because Russia and China and Iran are waiting for us to get tired. They're waiting for us to get tired on Ukraine. They're waiting for us to get tired in terms of Israel. We can't do that. We've got to show we're always going to fight for freedom and we're always going to fight for our friends. Thank you.
Question relates to what you're talking about, Ukraine, Israel. How do you clean up D.C.? Because just this morning, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, if anybody follows the stock market, they're up 8-9% after this deal with Israel. And that happens every time there's a conflict. So that tells me that there's some corruption in D.C. There's contracts getting dished out. How do you check that out and clean up the overspending there?
It's such a good point that you're making. So, you know, when I said we shouldn't throw money at Department of Defense, it's not about giving. They're going to always say, oh, give us money. You actually have to go and take down that bureaucracy, take down the red tape. But they also play favorites with these defense companies. And if you look at what's happened, it has taken decades for our military men and women just to get a modernized handgun. I was at Sig Sauer in New Hampshire recently. They just got the first modernized handgun in decades because our Department of Defense is so slow and so bureaucratic. And they create the contracts the way they do so that only the big guys can get it. We've got a lot of good small American companies that can produce for our men and women in a really good way. We've got to change that entire contract situation because it shouldn't be that when something happens, the big guys continue to make the money. It's got to be, what are we doing to make sure we have everything we need so that we can be strong?
Time for one more question.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. Oh, make it a good one. We got a cute little one here.
Well, Nikki, I just want to say one thing real quick before I ask my question. So my mom has served 10 years in the Army, and today's also my birthday. So that's the reason why I came here, is just to listen to your speech and listen to all your stuff you said all about. And my question is, what are you going to do about the crazy people running our schools?
Well, first of all, happy birthday. How old are you? 11. So are you in 6th grade? 5th grade. I love that. Well, clearly you are in a good school, Mom, because it's great that you knew to ask that. First of all, thank your family for your service. It is a family sacrifice, and you should be incredibly proud of your mom. I'm incredibly proud of your mom. So when it comes to the schools, a lot of the reason I want to move those federal programs down. So D.C. decides a lot of what you learn in school. And what they do is they go down to a state like Iowa, and they say, if you teach this, we'll give you this much money. If you teach this, we'll give you this much money. If you teach critical race theory, we'll give you this much money. The problem is all of that comes with strings. And that's what's gotten us all messed up in what we teach. That's why if we can move those programs down, you're getting rid of all of those strings. So you've got a great governor that's going to say, you know what? I want to make sure they know reading and math and science and history and the arts. And then all of a sudden, it's going back to the basics. Because teachers, God bless them, they want teachers to not just be a teacher, they want them to be a nurse and a guidance counselor and the pastor and, oh, by the way, teach to a test. And that's why we're losing so many teachers along the way. We've got to get all of the craziness out, but the way you get the craziness out is, one, transparency cures all things, but two, to simplify it. So we're going to simplify it to where we just go and say, can our kids read, write, add, do science, and are we getting them ready for the jobs of the future? And we can do that, but we can't do it with the Department of Education in D.C. the way it is. We can do it if we send that down to the states and let parents have more of a say, and that's what we're going to try and do for you. So, yeah, we'll ask you in just... So I'm going to leave you with this, and we can answer any questions when we're in the line. I'll leave you with this. This is what I will say. Someone asked me why I was running. And I said, you know, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunities. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband, Michael, and his military brothers and sisters. I want them to know their sacrifice matters, that they do know we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son because I am tired of watching him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And for the first time, 78% of Americans don't think their kids are going to live as good of a life as we did. We have a country to save. We can't be okay with that. But I'll tell you this, we can do this. America has an amazing ability to self-correct. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know where up is. We're there. So if you like what I had to say today, go tell 10 people. Tell them to go to NikkiHaley.com. Tell them to caucus. Tell them to volunteer. Tell them to pitch in $5, $10, $25. Tell them to get involved in what it's going to take to get our country back on track. If you don't like what I've had to say today, shh. Just don't say anything and don't tell anyone you were here. God bless you. Thank you very much.